Yeah, it was a great experience. So Dragon's Den, they approached us, which I didn't know. They've got a whole team of researchers that look for startups and approach startups to be on the show. What they said to us is, and I think I've seen this on the show, they're looking for more impact-led businesses, which is great, and I think I've seen a few of those over the last few series. Once I realised it wasn't a joke, you immediately go through the process of, this is 7 million viewers, so the PR reach here is there's nothing else like it that a business our size can go and get without a cost. The downside, of course, is, if you mess up on Dragon's Den, it's potential national TV, you tank your business. But you kind of go through that rationale of, I've watched Dragon's Den, I kind of know what the questions are. You also know where people mess it up if they haven't got their numbers or whatever. So it's really easy to be reasonably comfortable. You'll be able to be okay. And then, balance that against 7 million viewers, that's huge. So you've got this piece of gold over here if you can answer the questions.
Welcome to Seekers, a podcast where I speak with founders and visionary leaders to uncover the stories behind their companies and their personal transformation along the way. You probably remember Sanjay Lobo from his standout pitch on Dragon's Den, where he impressed the dragons and walked away with 4 offers for his startup OnHand. Originally inspired by a personal challenge with his father's care needs and an idea from a group of charities, OnHand was designed to make volunteering tech-enabled and mobile-first. Think of it as the Uber for volunteering. After a major pivot, OnHand is now the leading employee engagement platform in the UK, helping companies hit their social responsibility targets and making it easy for employees to volunteer daily. Before OnHand, Sanjay had an impressive career as a corporate lawyer at high-growth companies like lastminute.com and Vistaprint. It is in these roles where he developed the critical skills that helped him transform OnHand from a non-profit into a thriving business. If you think of lawyers as the ones who always highlight risks and freak us out, Sanjay flipped the script by leveraging his legal background to find opportunities and drive growth. Let's dive into his journey. Sanjay, you're the founder and CEO of OnHand, the leading volunteering platform for employee engagement. Before starting OnHand, you held senior roles at lastminute.com and Vistaprint. And what's even more interesting is that you were a lawyer before all of this. So before we dive deep into your career journey, can you take us back to your childhood? What did you want to become when you were little? What was your childhood like?
Yeah, great question. I love asking that question. I often ask it in interviews, actually. It's really interesting hearing people's backgrounds, because I do think some of the things you go through in that period form who you are in life and in work. So I grew up in a place called Tooting in South London. Tooting has risen in its gentrification over the last few years, actually last couple of decades.
It's a trendy place nowadays.
It is a trendy place. I guess 40-something years ago, it was less trendy. And I guess it was a bit of a harsh place. It was poor. We didn't have much cash. I grew up with my mum. My dad left when I was fairly young. So single mum, she worked full time. I guess the expectations for kids that I went to school with weren't great. We didn't expect much. Folks went off to be, bus drivers, brickies, and bin men, and no disrespect to those careers. They're great careers, but that was the expectation level really for lots of the kids I went to school with. And I got lucky. I did really well academically. Leaned into that. Did okay at GCSEs, but then was desperate to leave home and leave Tooting for after A levels, and saw a route to go to university. And because I was so desperate to leave, I did really well at A levels, and that took me on a completely different path to a law degree at UCL, which was unheard of path to break out that well.
Excellent. So why did you choose law from everything else that you could be doing?
Yeah, it's a great question, that as well. I don't really know. I had an older brother, and he had no idea what he wanted to do. He's 4 years older, so I guess I watched him having no idea what to do, and mum and other family members always having a go at him, having no idea what to do. And at the time, this is back in the 80s, there was a program called LA Law. Some lawyers who were just cool, and so I just started saying I'll be a lawyer, and of course everyone's reaction to that was wow, oh that's amazing, no idea what it was about, so that's why I chose law. It was cool on TV.
Did you like it? So you started working at a law firm. Did you like it then?
It was really mixed bag. I think if I look back, it was incredibly hard work, which is again like formative on your first jobs. Like first day at law firm, I was there till 5 in the morning. Right, it's completely different spectrum of work level. And we were a smaller law firm, but getting really big deals against the big guys. So we'd often be battling against the biggest law firms out there. So you got wonderful experience, incredibly hard work. And I guess if I'm really honest and look back, it was somewhat of a bullying culture, right? And I don't think that's unusual in those kind of professional firms. I hope it's different these days, but you weren't ever comfortable about leaving the office if it was 7 o'clock, or you had to watch for who was leaving before you could leave, kind of scenario. So it was. I don't think I enjoyed working in the law firm, and I jumped from the law firm to work in house, and that was loads better. Yeah, so it's a completely different experience working in a company where people really need your help, and so we're very grateful for it. And that led me on to a completely different experience, and I eventually moved to lastminute.com. I really enjoyed the role there.
Tell us about your time at lastminute.com. You later moved to Vistaprint. You started in legal roles there, but then transitioned to marketing and partnerships. I find this quite interesting because most lawyers I know, no disrespect, I love lawyers, but they would be disaster marketeers. So how did this come about?
Yeah, it's a great question. Actually, there's a few examples that I can think of who've made the transition. And another one, Alex from Beam, has made that transition. So a lawyer who's now founding one of the, I guess, most impactful tech for good startups. But we are unusual. So when I was at lastminute.com as a lawyer, we had to take some giant risks, and I think that really changed my mindset as a lawyer. I'd always been, risk. I'd been the typical lawyer. At lastminute.com, there was a certain point when we realised we didn't have permission, or we didn't have the records that were quite correct on data protection, particularly for whether we could market to our existing base of customers. And of course, for any e-commerce business, retention marketing is like almost the biggest part of your revenue. And so the correct legal call at that point was, well, you've got to stop marketing to all of your existing base. That would have destroyed the business. So we kind of took the decision to say, well, we can't do that. We're going to assume we've got consent, and we're going to keep marketing and therefore the revenue. I expected to get massive backlash from that from customers. And of course, we got hardly any, almost zero. And so having taken what is one of the largest risks, essentially with data at lastminute.com, and having no repercussion, I think then formed my view on, well, okay, if that was one of the largest risks I can take, what about some of these other things that come up all the time, much, much lower risk? Well, why don't we balance that risk with the likelihood of the pain coming? And that then changed how I viewed legal stuff. When I moved to Vistaprint, very much I was pushing the business to do things that were different and taking greater risk on how they could use law. And that led to revenue creation in a really big way. And so at some point, very early on, I was just asked to take on more things outside of law, and Vistaprint was just growing it was one of those rocket ship growth scenarios. So anyone with half a brain who'd had some management experience before would just be asked to do more stuff anyway. And very naturally, I think within 6 months, I was doing more outside of legal than actually in legal.
Oh, excellent. So actually using your legal background and knowledge to look for opportunities rather than impose limitations. No, we can't do this, we can't do that. Because sometimes that's how lawyers, even in-house, are seen, the ones who actually create restrictions rather than looking for opportunities.
It was absolutely the mindset lawyers are brought up in is risk and risk aversion. But right at that cutting edge where some of the law isn't clear, and back then in the 90s and then noughties for e-commerce, lots of the law was really new. You could watch what some of the leading players were. What was Amazon doing with getting consent to send you marketing? Well, it took away the consent, took it away completely. So 100% of customers were into retention marketing, but no one really noticed. And so if you were following what some of the, edgier law players were doing, you could really enhance the commercial aspects of a business.
Interesting. So what were some of the other key lessons you took away from your time at lastminute.com and Vistaprint?
Yeah, there was a lot of commercial, right? So at lastminute.com, back then, I guess it was, the Airbnb of its time in the UK. And I guess I had exposure to so many incredibly talented people at the top of their game. And so presenting wise. I just learned so much from that group. And back then when I presented, I used to stutter, stammer. I was absolutely awful, but I did learn a hell of a lot from just watching them. Brand was also massive at lastminute.com. One thing that was lacking there was actually how much we looked at profitability and commercial. And then the flip from going to Vistaprint was almost every meeting was about the money and exactly what margin we'd make and what conversion rate there was. And the metric-driven nature of Vistaprint was absolutely incredible for someone like me who's come from that brand perspective at lastminute.com. And then almost every conversation was about the money, to the extent where I think the first management meeting I went to, it was looking at our management accounts for the month. And, the rising cost for me joining was very clear on the metrics. It was like, wow, okay, we're that transparent on metrics. And that was hugely influential on what I did later.
That's amazing. So building this kind of really full picture of what is to run like a commercially focused organization.
Yeah,
so last minute being the more kind of traditional startup focused on high growth, and Vistaprint more sort of conservative and focused on optimizing costs. So it sounds like an incredible experience.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
What I find interesting, by the way, is, a founder who started your entrepreneurial journey in your 40s, you gain this experience only if you work in organizations like that, and only if you learn with somebody else's money. And what I find really interesting with we glamorize the college dropout and starting a company in your 20s, but in reality, you can learn so much in your 20s and 30s before you take the leap to start your own company. Do you think you would have the same success if you had started being, a marketeer or entrepreneur earlier in your life?
Yeah, that's a great question. I guess we'll never know. But I think early on, I probably had signs of wanting to be or having some entrepreneurial bug. And actually, I went back to my old school just last week to give a talk to kids doing their GCSEs about starting businesses. And what I talked about was when I was at school, I'd be selling scratch cards in the playground for McDonald's getting a free burger and whatever, or I'd be organising music nights and selling tickets for it. And so some of those things that kids do. And I think as a society we don't typically recognise that. I think the US is very good at recognising that is probably an entrepreneurial mindset, and they should do something about it. I think in the UK we're much less focused on that. But it's what I tried to speak to the kids about was, hey, I'm guessing there's a group of kids already doing that kind of stuff, probably online at this point, and they should be aware of it and lean into that entrepreneurial skill. I of course went on a academic route, and there's lots of reward that comes from that, including mine, right? So working as a lawyer, you're well paid. I had my first kid in my 20s, and so the choice of doing something completely different probably wouldn't have worked for me on lifestyle. At that point in my 20s, having a family, it was like, okay, keep the good salary. And it was only later that I could step back and say, okay, I probably feel stable enough to try something myself. I'm not sure I would have had the confidence to do it in my 20s.
Interesting. But then it's got the flip side, right? So leaving a secure, well-paid senior job to start a new venture is quite a leap, especially when you have a family already, you're in your 40s. So tell us a bit about this period in your life. What encouraged you to take this step, and when were you sure that OnHand was what you wanted to dedicate 100% of your time to?
Yeah, so it was around 2017 was my last big role at Vistaprint, and that was coming to an end. The growth was definitely tailing off at Vistaprint, and you could see lots of people were leaving, and so I left in 2017. There's probably a little career journey where before that was lastminute.com. I joined lastminute.com probably at the end of its heyday, and so most of my time at lastminute.com, people would talk about the good old days and the amazing growth period they had, and there was a bit of that startup bug that I'd missed, but I kind of caught the end of it at lastminute.com. Vistaprint was smaller, growing a lot faster, and so I was there 7 years through a really hyper growth period. When I left, I joined an even smaller company. So there's this story of joining smaller and smaller companies, getting closer and closer to that startup moment. The startup I joined after Vistaprint, I was only there 6 months. I massively clashed with the founder from day one, which I think is common. It's common for like a new, I guess, senior hire to clash with a founder. we clashed really badly, and so I quit after 6 months. And then I really wasn't sure what to do. So what should I do next? I was in my 40s, and again, I think this is a really common story. If you're in your 40s and you're looking for what next, you probably get offers to do the same things you've done before, and there were plenty of people that left Vistaprint that were looking at doing something new, and it's possible I could have joined them. But I wanted to do something that was probably different in a way of giving back. And it's that point in your life where you're like, okay, I'm in my 40s, I've probably got one or two big jobs left. What is it I really want to do? And another commercial entity just didn't seem like the thing. Just, making money, growing, yeah, that's all fun, but is it enough at this point in life? And so it was a real, what do I want to do moment. And I wasn't sure when OnHand came around. It wasn't my idea. It was a bunch of charities that had started it up, had the idea, hadn't quite launched it, but the idea was kind of out there, and they were looking for someone to take it on. And when I found out about it, I was struggling a bit with my dad getting his shopping, and I lived in Brighton, he lived in London, and he was getting to the age where he couldn't quite carry it. So I was looking for a solution for him. We were lucky that he had carers in the facility he lived in, and they were going to get his shopping, which is great, other than they charged, £20 an hour plus VAT, and his shop was going from £10, £12 up to £30, £40 when you include the carer cost. And so this idea that you could use tech to connect someone in need, like my dad, to get you shopping, with a local volunteer, I thought it was brilliant. I thought it was brilliant, and it solved my issue. And from the background I was at, I guess I thought, well, if it solves my issue, it could probably solve tens of thousands of people's issue, or hundreds of thousands, who knows, millions of people may need this service. And that was it. I couldn't stop thinking about it. So it wasn't a case of me saying, hey, I'm all in on this OnHand thing. It was almost instantly on finding out about it. I was 7 days a week thinking about how I could grow it.
Amazing. So it first functioned as a traditional marketplace, right? Matching volunteers with those in need within local communities. But later it transitioned into a B2B model focused on employee engagement and helping companies achieve their social responsibility and community involvement targets. So what was the main motivation behind this strategic shift? Was it the business model challenge, or was there something more to it? Because at the moment, as an individual, I can't just go on the app and look for somebody who is in need locally.
Yeah, you can't anymore. So you're right. We started off as B2C. And again, it was the charity's idea to set this thing up, and very much focused on the elderly care sector. And the way they set it up was B2C. We charge the person in need, so someone like my dad or me as the relative organising the help. We charge me, £10 to get the help. £8 of that went to the charities, and £2 was like a platform commission. As Deliveroo or Uber works with a platform commission type thing. To make that work, you've got to reach, Uber or Deliveroo scale. You've got to be giant to make the platform commission model work. And when I came on board, I kind of looked at the model and thought, okay, you've got to be giant to make it work. If that route doesn't work, there's a couple of things I don't quite like about the model. One is we're still charging, an elderly person. So I get why we're doing it, but it doesn't quite feel quite right. But the bit that really jarred for me was we're also kind of charging out the volunteer, right? So it's a volunteer, but somehow we're making money from you, and that bit just felt a bit too. That's not right, and that probably will stop us really going for it. And in the first year, we were growing nicely, but not at the Deliveroo Uber site type scale. Though we did raise some money during that period because we beat targets we were looking at. But what really forced the change was COVID. So launched in 2019, 2020 is when COVID hit. Overnight, we're literally charging the wrong person. We're charging the elderly person, the most vulnerable person on the planet at that point. They're all self-isolating. And of course, we stopped charging, straight away. We'd done a funding round just a few months before, so we were pretty stable on cash. So I thought we've got time to figure out what our new revenue model is going to be. Is it working with councils or local authorities or NHS or whatever? And we tried some of that, and that was showing some signs of working, but we kind of all know local authorities and NHS aren't exactly cash growth machines. But we had a stroke of luck, and the luck was businesses started coming to us. And so the first business was a building society based in the Northeast. They came to us to say, hey, we've just sent all our folks home. They're all working remotely. We're desperate for a way to engage them in their local communities. We think your app can help, right? You can connect people with their local communities. Can you help us? And as soon as that call came in, it was like light bulb moment for, okay, that model is where we charge the business to get help for their employees in engagement and well-being. The employees help those folks we've been helping before who no longer have to pay. So the people, the end recipient of help, they're happy. The employees are happy because they're doing good stuff, and the corporate is really happy to pay for it because they get all of these wonderful ESG stats. So in that year, we signed up 10 corporate customers. The year after, we signed up 100 and then started flying.
Amazing. What's the size of the business that currently engages OnHand?
So it's massive variation. So we have, I think the smallest business that works with us is literally under 10 people, so really, really small. The largest is into the tens of thousands. So we have giant variation. We started off very much focused on SMBs and mid-markets, so 50 people companies to 1,000 or so companies. Very much thinking about, well, how will we prove that this can work? Where can we sell to where their sales cycle are the quickest? And of course, that's going to be SMB. And then the longer we've gone on, the more larger companies have come to us and starting approaching us. So we're starting to make that shift to go a bit more upmarket at this point.
So once you onboard a company, what motivates employees to participate in the volunteer programs? Do most people kind of naturally want to volunteer, or does the platform need to create some sort of demand and engagement through specific strategies?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think really baseline, everyone typically wants to do something good and give back, but there are massive barriers to doing it, and that's why volunteering programs have traditionally had really low uptake. So so there's some stats out there. 70% of the FTSE 100 has volunteering policies, so paid time off for employees to give back. But the uptake is typically less than 10%. So it's the policies are out there, the paid time off for volunteers is out there, employees is out there, but the uptake's tiny. And that's because traditionally it's been half a day out of the office, full day out of the office. Let's go and do something as a group on a set day, set time, set location. And of course, that just doesn't work for 90% of the organisation. Just can't take a morning off to go and do this thing. They're too busy. So we thought about that a lot differently. It's we can do that, sure, but we kind of know that model doesn't work brilliantly to engage your whole workforce. So what if we can make volunteering as easy as stuff you already do? I don't know. Let's say you're going shopping and you buy an extra bag of pasta and you're able to leave it in a donation bin in the supermarket. Well, literally, that's taking you like no time. That's the same time you're doing your own shopping. But you've actually done a good deed. You've donated some food. So how do we think about volunteering in a really different way? Think about it in terms of behaviour change, in terms of incorporating it into your daily life. And because of that, we stretched into lots of different areas. Your question was about, do we still need to have ways to motivate the employee? And absolutely we do. We think about it, I guess the way we organised our app is we've thought about it a lot like Deliveroo. How do you have, scrolling lists that make it easy to find the thing you want that are searchable? But we also think about it in terms of something like Duolingo. You've got to entice and excite the employee to want to do the activity and then come back and do more. And that's taken us a while, right? So when we first started off, it was a list of stuff. People would come in once a month, once every 6 months or whatever. And that was great, but it wasn't quite, Duolingo, I want to come back every day and do my module. At this point, we've got 90%. So 90% of employees come back and do more once they've done one thing. And on average, they're doing over 20 actions on the app every month. So to your question, you still have to engage the employee and motivate them in just the same way as a Duolingo would try and engage you to come back onto the app and do more activities. The desire is absolutely there, and it's how you break in so you make it easy enough and exciting enough that they want to come back.
Right, and micro-volunteering to me seems much more logical. Incorporating small acts of kindness and deeds into your daily life feels more natural and, most importantly, more impactful compared to planning a full day of charity activities, people taking time off work, often for marketing purposes or even social media attention.
Totally. So I think there's a place for both. I think the group volunteering piece is incredibly popular for HR teams and other teams want to organise that stuff. But it's there's a large element of team bonding that's involved in those team activities. I think less impactful, to be honest. I think they're great team bonding activities, and you can do some good. That's great. But as we know, again, that model's broken. It won't engage your entire workforce. I think what we've seen is micro-volunteering is a way to engage the mass employee workforce and for them to do things frequently. And it may well be it's stuff they already do. That's fine. Get them recording it, and you as a corporate start getting wonderful stats on impact. But we also know, because people come back, so they get, again, that 9 out of 10 of people that do one action come back and do more, you can then take people on a journey. And if it's as simple as they're donating an extra bag of pasta while you're doing your own shopping, literally no time as step one, well, what's step 2 and what's step 3? And how do I take you to step 7, which is, would you do a befriending call to an elderly person somewhere in the UK who hasn't had anyone speak to them for the last week or so, and you may be the only person they speak to that week, which is uncomfortable for a lot of people to do that call. But how about we help you with guidance on how to do that call? How about we give you a talk from a leading expert on loneliness and give you guidance on how to even introduce yourself and perhaps even walk through a call with you. So how do we take people on a journey where they're doing something simple? Maybe they're already doing that good deeds anyway. How do we take them from there to doing something really impactful on a really regular basis?
You think experienced quite an impressive growth over the past few years. Other than the business model switch, what were some of the most critical strategic decisions you've taken that have impacted your growth?
Yeah, the model switch was definitely one. The second one was we started in the elderly help space, right? That's how we started off. The whole idea was connecting a local volunteer to someone who was elderly and isolated and just getting them help. And we did that as the sole thing we did through 2019 and into 2020. And as we launched with businesses, we kind of saw, well, employees care about that, but they also care about homelessness, and they care about youth mentoring, and they care about climate crisis, and all the other social issues that are out there. And so in 2020 and through 2021, we just started spreading the activity we did from elderly care into pretty much all social impact areas. And then we started doing environmental stuff as well. And so giving the employee choice was a big thing for us. Environmental also became a big thing for us. So we let you take environmental actions, and they vary in their level of difficulty. But some of the easy ones are, hey, just use a reusable cup when you get your coffee, not a disposable one. How about you, pick up some litter on the way home today, or how about you turn off your tap while brushing your teeth? Very simple actions that anyone can do. But again, what we know is if we can get people engaging on the app in a very simple way, we can also take them on a journey that builds on what kind of impact and effort level they'll put in, and they'll trust us to do that. So broadening what we offer the volunteer to do, and then moving into environmental was, I think, two of the big things we've done.
Interesting. And what have been some of the challenges and the biggest down moments that you faced so far in growing the business?
Yeah, so I think this is the same for any startup. So we're 5 years into our 5th year now, and we finally have control on, we're in control of our destiny at this point. We've got enough cash. Our last raise was actually 2 years ago. We're generating enough cash that we're going to be break even pretty soon. And so we're in control of our own destiny, and probably for one of the first times in that 5 year period. And that gives you massive choice, right? It's do we raise again to go faster, or add some expansion product-wise or geography-wise or whatever, or not. Once you hit that profitability level, you've got great choice. Earlier periods in our history, it wasn't that. It was very much survival. So I think the greatest difficulties are the early years of you kind of very conscious of when you're running out of money. You have those you go to bed moments where you're thinking, well, how do I extend that runway? And for a company like us, the biggest cost is headcount. And so in the early years, you always had a running list of how you would stretch runway by having to cut staff. And that's awful. That's an awful founder experience. I'm sure all founders probably go through it. But those are probably the toughest bits that we've gone through in the very early years. It's the kind of stuff that starts giving you, stress symptoms. I used to break out in hives a lot. Thankfully, I haven't done that for a while, but yeah, huge amounts of stress that go with that early period of just surviving.
And it sounds also like a quite lonely journey as a sole founder. I get the stress is, extra difficult. Have you ever had these moments where you're laying down in bed and you think, why am I doing this? This idea is probably just got in my head. I'd better quit now and just find a proper job.
Of course, yeah. I think I'd be lying if I didn't think that. If I said I didn't think that at least once a month, even now, right? We're getting to that point of we've got control and we should be profitable, and agree is a great choice, but it's still hard. Everything we do is hard. We show off all the wonderful things on LinkedIn, and that's great. Behind that, of course, there's furious activity where you've got to be really on it, and you've got to be on it every day, week, month for things to work out as they do. So yeah, absolutely have that. Why am I doing this? Shouldn't I go and get a normal job? I don't know if 5 years in, I'm not sure I could have a normal job anymore. Probably unemployable because of it. But yeah, certainly have had those thoughts.
I'm a huge believer that every successful entrepreneur brings a distinct set of skills and experiences that give them a unique edge. And your background is quite unique. We don't often see lawyers become tech founders. How has your previous experience as a lawyer shaped the way you lead and make decisions as a founder and CEO now? And can you share a specific example maybe where your legal background proved particularly valuable when you navigated a challenge, or you probably saw an opportunity for the business where others didn't?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting that. So on the strict legal basis, I still do the legal stuff, right? So if there's contract variations that are needed for any deal, I look at the contracts. When we do investment rounds, we do have lawyers at this point that external lawyers that help us with investment rounds, but I input on all of that kind of stuff. So strict legal stuff, I guess I still get involved. Hopefully one day we'll have an in-house lawyer, but at the moment it's me. But I think the learnings over career that I take into what we do now, it's probably back to that example at lastminute.com where we took that huge risk and it changed the way I was as a lawyer. And the way it changed me as a lawyer was I'd from that point, I just started laying out risk to the commercial person and saying, here's what you're asking us to do. Here's the risk of what could go wrong. Here's what you're saying is the upside. What do you think is the best course? And you'd be really transparent about what the legal position was. And then give the business the choice, unless it was something really dramatic where you knew you couldn't do it because it was IP or data. And that transparency, I guess radical transparency, is what I brought into OnHand. So we're transparent about almost everything, to the extent where we talk about why folks need to leave the business because not everyone makes it. And we talk really, really openly about why it is and why it's occurred, how quickly it occurs, and for what reasons. And we also talk about what kind of metrics we need to hit on a monthly basis. But it's incredibly transparent to the extent we have 30 odd team members. Lots of them are from startup worlds, and they often, whenever we go for a big shift, they'll often comment on the transparency levels being completely different from anywhere they've worked before. But I think that's what I bring from prior career.
And how has founding and leading OnHand has changed you as an individual? Do you see like a transformation in yourself since you started the company?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'm probably less, but the same kind of founder issues that others have. The being in the moment when you're outside of work is difficult, and you kind of have to remind yourself of that kind of stuff a lot. I've got 3 kids, so that's a challenge, right? Where when you're a founder and things are still busy, I'm working at the moment. We're going through some changes, and I'm working long hours, and being like in the moment with kids when you're outside of work, that's a struggle. So has OnHand changed me in that regard? Yeah, I mean, I think I've had big jobs before, and I think I've worked hard before. Founding is a completely different level of where your brain is and how easy you're able to switch off or not. I'd worked long hours before, sure, but I was able to switch off fairly easily. Founding something different. So yeah, I think it's changed me in that regard. On the flip side, I think it's probably grown my confidence in what's possible, and certainly I present a lot more these days, and hopefully getting slightly better at that kind of stuff too. So yeah, confidence-wise, it's changed me in that regard as well.
Do you have any like habits or like mindsets that you have developed over the years that you believe contribute to kind of being at peace with yourself?
Yeah, habits. So that it's just taking the action. So we often think about things that we should be doing or isn't quite right, or you notice, is that the way it should be working, or is there an error there? And it's very easy just to ask a question or put it on someone else. So the habit I think I've really got into is where I spot something, we just take the action. It's like immediate. I'm trying to think of an example for you now, but I can't. It's typically you're spotting something not quite working right, and you could just say to someone in the customer service team, "Oh, well, this is not quite right." But actually, I've got access to the back end system. I can go and check it out and correct something. So taking the action is the big habit. Just get on with it versus pointing out something and letting someone else take responsibility, not knowing when they'll do it, kind of thing. Taking the action
absolutely.
is massively impactful.
And creating this culture, bias for action amongst everyone at the company.
Yeah, bias for action, yes.
It's very different from a corporate world, isn't it?
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, not just passing it on.
Right, so you are part of Dragon's Den. We've all seen the show. And you managed to secure investment from 4 dragons, which is amazing. Congratulations on that. So tell us about this experience. Was it beneficial for the company? What happened there?
Yeah, it was a great experience. So Dragon's Den, they approached us, which I didn't know. They've got a whole team of researchers that look for startups and approach startups to be on the show. What they said to us is, and I think I've seen this on the show, they're looking for more impact-led businesses, which is great, and I think I've seen a few of those over the last few series. And so got the invites. First of all, it was a joke. When I realised it wasn't
1st of April.
Yeah, right. It's like, Dragon's Den, you can't be serious. And I thought we were a bit too late stage for them and all that kind of stuff. But once I realised it wasn't a joke, you immediately go through the process of, this is 7 million viewers, so the PR reach here is there's nothing else like it that a business our size can go and get without a cost. The downside, of course, is, if you mess up on Dragon's Den, it's potential national TV, you tank your business. But you kind of go through that rationale of, I've watched Dragon's Den, I kind of know what the questions are. You also know where people mess it up, they haven't got their numbers or whatever. So it's really easy to be reasonably comfortable, you'll be able to be okay. And then, balance that against 7 million viewers, that's huge. So you've got this piece of gold over here if you can answer the questions. And so did the initial rounds for screening. You have to do a video of your pitch, and so I did the video, sent it off, and we got through. So we got through to recording. We got up to Manchester, went up the night before, got to the studio at 7 a.m, and at 9 a.m, met the producers who said, can you do your pitch? And so, of course, I just did the pitch that I'd recorded on the video rounds, and the producers said, well, that's not going to work for TV. That's not going to work for TV.
What was
Can
wrong
you
with
rewrite your pitch? And so this is 9 a.m. Can you rewrite your pitch? And by the way, you're on in an hour. So for me, that was fantastic because if I over-prepare, I start overthinking and worrying about what I forgot to say. And so didn't have time to worry about any of that, which reduces my nerves. And so, it was on. I wrote the pitch and straight onto recording. I think the edit is very good. I wasn't as smooth as the edit. The edit comes across really, really well. And then the session itself is like 90 minutes. So we're on TV for about 15 minutes, but the actual session itself, it's really long. And it's a lot of fun. It is all the questions you see on TV, but then there's behind the scenes stuff where the dragons negotiate between themselves for quite a while. I think there was an offer on the table, and then Peter came in and said, hey, I want 12% and it'll reduce if you give your money back. And they don't show this on TV, but I immediately said, there's no way we're giving you money back. We're a growth business. We invest it in the business. It's all about growth. It's not about paying you back 20k whilst we're still growing at 200%. That's the wrong call. And then there was a total discussion. It's like 20 minute discussion between the dragons about which was the right way to do it or not. So it was like they were negotiating between themselves. A lot of fun. Really, really recommend the dragon experience for anyone that's starting off a business.
Are they part of the business at the moment?
So that's also interesting. So we've got 4 offers. Having done the research before, I kind of knew you can negotiate afterwards. So half the deals don't happen. They don't happen because either the founder thinks they've done a bad deal, which I did, really want to be on TV, so said yes, or the dragons do due diligence and they don't like what they see. And so straight after the Den, we were doing a larger funding round. It was part of the larger funding rounds. We had a couple of VCs. One was putting in £1 million plus, and of course I had to make them happy. So immediately went back to dragons to say, hey, look, to justify the better deal for you, really need to see what you commit to. And Deborah, Stephen, they turned up for calls themselves, which was brilliant. Tuka and Peter sent their teams, which is also cool, but also very quickly dropped out once I said, hey, we're going to negotiate. Deborah and Stephen very much tried to get us there, committing to various introductions, committing to things their team would get involved with, which was fun. But I was doing a lot of back and forth between them and the VCs coming in with a lot of money. And at some point, I just didn't think we'd get there. And so I called a halt to the negotiation, saying, I don't think we'll be able to bridge the gap between what you, Deborah and Steve, are able to commit to. That's going to make such a difference to the £1 million check that they'll be happy with giving you a better deal. So we didn't go ahead, but they are really wonderful. Deborah, every so often, we exchange notes. There's startups I put away every so often, and getting occasional WhatsApps from Stephen Bartlett's also fairly mental.
But I guess the publicity of the show was quite beneficial for the company, wasn't it? Even that's how I heard about it.
Yeah, huge growth spurt for us. I think we had about 2,000 inbound leads in the following weeks.
Wow.
People, still, right? This is a year later, and you just mentioned it there. That it comes up almost every meeting I have. Certainly every launch we have of the company, someone in the audience will put their hand up and ask about Dragon's Den, and it's a year later. So I guess the goodwill and benefit you get from that exposure, it probably lasts for years. Again, massive for us.
Stephen Bartlett gave you some tough feedback on the app's design and branding during your pitch. Did you notice a significant change in the business and overall growth after the rebrand? I absolutely love your look and feel at the moment.
Thank you. Yeah, so it was kind of fun when he kind of roasted us on national TV. He said something like, the app is really, really ugly.
And then we had ugly, actually.
We've used that on socials quite a bit. It's the app is really, really ugly. It was like, wow, okay, national TV, that hurt. But we had a brand rework in the works, which has come off, and it's lovely. It's really lovely look and feel we have now. But also go back to that moment, I do think some of the advice I had when I was very early in tech was, if you're happy with your product when you launch, you've launched too late. I think that was a Reid Hoffman quote. The whole idea is you just need to get it out there, see the reaction, and build from there. And so I guess if I could go back, I'd probably answer the question differently. It's like, look, yeah, you're right, but look at the growth and the revenue we created with that. You want to make it better, absolutely, and it'll be 10x. But you need to get out there whilst you're kind of embarrassed of your product.
Perfect. Right. It was an absolute pleasure meeting with Sanjay. And before I let you go, if you could go back in time and give your younger self one piece of advice, what would it be?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it's belief in yourself. And so, if I go back over what we've talked about today, I don't think I had the confidence to do something myself until I was, well into my 40s. You had that question much earlier. Could you have been successful if you'd done this in your 20s? And I probably couldn't have been, because I wasn't as confident about doing it. So belief in yourself, I think, is the greatest advice I could probably give to a younger self, and anyone else out there who's listening. It's belief in yourself. If you want to do something like this, you can do it. It's a lot of work, sure, but anyone could do what we've achieved at OnHand.
Well, we have to add to that hard work, dedication, and experience. Thank you so much, Sanjay. Where can people find you online?
We're on. I'm on LinkedIn, so look me up on LinkedIn. Please do connect. OnHand is beonhand.co.uk. Look forward to hearing from folks.
Thanks for listening to Seekers. This podcast is brought to you by Pony, a design and branding agency serving ambitious tech companies globally. Visit us at pony.studio.